identify the elements much easier. On the right, the moment that we see that the element is moving, we see it's a hand. So that means that every time, and this is like milliseconds, every time we'll see this poster, we'll see a hand. It's something that cannot be unseen. And these are just two examples of hundreds how technology can change a medium in a way where the technology is not really important. Now I'm coming back to the example with what we did with marketing. Everything that we did there was because of the technology. And now what we're doing with Artivive is off the story, because of the narrative, because of what we want to say. And when people are having this experience, they will never talk about the technology. They will talk about the story that they will get. The same thing will happen with Sheila going, it's like, did you know that they had to overpaint the painting because they were too poor? They will not say, it's like, I had this app called Artivive and then I scanned and then the image changed and then I could see something. It's like always about the story. If somebody will go past the poster and will look at it, it's like, that's a hand. I know that's a hand. Again, it's the story, the narrative, and it's not about the technology. And this is a very important piece that we learned during the projects, and the big difference between what we did with marketing and with the brands, where we were doing things because of the technology, to moving to the story, the narrative. A good example for this is also when we're thinking about 3D movies. You can remember Avatar is like, oh God, this is so cool. It's immersive. You're in the story. You can feel already the content, the actors, and then all the TV producers like, now we have 3D TVs and you have the glasses and everything is great. But afterwards we learned that a bad movie is bad in 3D as well. And a good movie doesn't really need the 3D extension, right? Because we are captured by the story. Just a little overview about Artivive, because before we go into 2-3 examples that we can try out. So we have a little bit more than 90,000 artists around the world, 2 million app users. We're working very much with universities together because it's very interesting to work with the next generation of artists who are in both worlds, traditional way of creating art with a digital extension. We also work with a lot of museums and institutions. Please go on our YouTube page and see some of the use cases. I think we have a little bit more than 100 use cases from different projects, so check them out. And now it's time to use your phones and scan 2 artworks from Albertina. I think, Susanna, you're also in touch with the guys from Albertina. Did you manage to implement it already?
No. Albertina is our nemesis, seriously. It's the word.
No, they have, I think they have some issues. We also at some point called them and said, hey, we have some workshops, like the same thing that we're doing now, where we can explain different ways how technology can be used. And it will be great maybe to also have the art historians and the curators to try it out. And we don't charge anything. And they were like, yeah, but everybody's like, it's called Kurzarbeit, it's like a short amount of work. Everybody's not working right now. It's like, yeah, but maybe they're interested like in the private time. I don't know, it feels like work. Let's check in 5 months.
In 5 months, nice.
It's like, yeah, that's the way how you will.
Yeah, I love their collection, but they're difficult.
Yes, I loved it.
Yeah.
So the 2 examples that I want to show you here are both from Albertina. So you already know also a little bit about the house. We have the hare, the rabbit from Albrecht Dürer. He was one of the first artists, or the first artist, to depict reality as detailed as possible, where each hair is drawn here with very much detail. And the story says that also the reflection in the eye of the rabbit reflects his studio. So only taking this story and converting it is like giving all the information that I gave you before, like again, in subconscious, in subliminal, but it's something that people can take with them. It's like, I will buy the rabbit, also the poster from the museum, because we also have the AR posters, which are the normal posters, because the app is also recognizing them. Bring it home and it's like, do you know that in the eye you see the reflection of Dürer studio? So again, are stories that people can take with them. On the right, we have the Delvaux with the 2 worlds, the living and the dead, which are disconnected. And they are living somehow together, but not really in a connection. And it's a huge painting. It's also great painting. And we worked a lot on the details in the back to bring them into the front. So with the movement, we can show and emphasize these two words. Also, I will share with you a link where you can download these PDFs, but I'm just stressing out again that Luca has a lot of postcards that you can try out. We'll send him more postcards, so whenever you're interested. And when the next time you're in Vienna, try it out. And here we have another example from an artist from Prague. She recreated a little prince using augmented reality. This is one of the, I think, 20 artworks. The exhibition was such a big success that they also produced a book with it. And on the right, there is another poster from the exhibition that I mentioned before. Okay, to wrap it up, because I think also the time is almost over, let me just give you some things that, or some points, bullet points that we learned during the last 4 years and that we're doing this to the different projects. So we think and we see that the Museum of the 21st Century will be interactive. But it's interaction between the artworks that we already have and the history and the heritage, but with the opportunity to deliver content in a more fun way. People will love to go to the Museum of the 21st Century. The Museum of the 21st Century will be befriended with locals and visitors. It will be a dialogue. This dialogue can be also just created through technology. And the moment that museums and institutions are involving and collaborating with local artists, like with examples that we have seen, is like, okay, we already have this collection. Unfortunately, most of the artists are dead. So let's work with living artists to have the digital layer, to have a new interpretation, to have a thing that we can offer. Because being in the digital space, it can be changed from month to month. So we can have a university, a whole class working on the artworks, creating the content. And the next time we have, let's say, an animation artist who's working on the different artworks. And therefore we can bring the locals back to the museum, showing the same artworks and offering a new experience. And we also see that at least in Austria, museums are doing were doing the same thing for many years, because Vienna is a very touristic destination. So the tourists were coming and coming and coming. So it was enough to have just a blockbuster show at the Warhol and people would just come to the museum. But now they realized that they lost touch with local communities because they were so focused on these tourists who are coming. And I think this is a very short way of thinking, because tourists are just coming once. But you have the locals who can come every week. If you as an institution offer something for the visitors to come every week, they will buy the yearly pass, because they will be more than happy to do so. And I think now, where the tourists are missing and people are somehow trapped at home, is the best time to try new things out. You don't have to, as a museum, don't have to invest too much in hardware. You don't have to invest at all in hardware, because people already have the latest hardware with them. So it's much better to invest, because you also don't have any maintenance, to invest into content. So if you have the money to buy 10 iPads, work with 10 artists together. Let them create content. Take that money and give it to the local artists, because when they have also the content in the museum, they will bring friends and family, and it will be again a total different connection with these local communities. Yeah, so that's also a very important part, is like work with local communities, because they have their own communities, followers. They're in a kind influencers, let's say. And therefore you will have a dialogue and build up an easy connection with the local community. And a very important part that we also saw in Susanna's presentation is data. The moment that people will use the phone, you will get data. How long are they looking at the artworks? Which artworks? In which order? How often? How many different people are looking at it? And this is data that you get for free, and you will learn a lot on how people are moving in the museum, in the institution, how they are consuming the content. Okay, so that was a lot from my side. Please feel free to go to artifact.com/test. You will come to a Google Drive where you will be able to download many PDFs. If you have the opportunity to print them out, please do so, because the interaction to have the digital content connected to something that it's not digital is totally different than scanning a screen. Feel free also to reach out to me if you have any questions, but that's it from my side.
Hey, thank you, Sergio. Super nice presentations by you both. We will have now a short questions and answers kind of a session with you too. So if anyone from the participants has any kind of question, please tune in or post your question in the chat. It can be even in Slovenian, and I can translate it. But yes, I think you both had very kind of descriptive presentations that would kind of answer to a lot of the questions I might have for you. But still, first, of course, maybe Susanna elaborated this very well, but Sergio, maybe to understand better your kind of team, you know, what's behind the app, how many people are working on this, you know, can you maybe?
Yeah, sure. So the whole idea started, like I said, during the time that I was working for the agency. I was able then to motivate our CTO at the time to join this cause. That gave us a shortcut. So we had all the experience through the project that we have done for brands who spend a lot of money. So we had a good start from that. Now we are around 10 people in Vienna working on this. We are also working with an outsourcing company in Romania who helps us develop some things depending on where we are, because we have the tool where the creatives can create the content. We have the app. We are also working now on the platform and so on. Then we have an exclusive partner in an office in Seoul who's taking care of that market, because also, as Susanna mentioned, not everybody is speaking English, and markets are very different. And we saw a huge potential there. For a short time, we also have one in Japan, an exclusive partner there. We have an office also in Beijing, which had a very hard time in the last months where everything was closed, because in China they were more strict. So therefore, we're looking forward to see how that develops. And we have an office as well as in San Francisco, where nobody's sitting right now because there is everything closed and it's very expensive. So we'll take up on that when things are getting better.
Thank you. Susanna, maybe you, because Sergio already kind of touched up a little bit on this topic, how did this whole COVID crisis impact daily art and your operations?
Yeah.
Did you see any rise of users or?
Yeah, we did. We had around 30% of rise last year. And right now, thanks to that additional boost that App Store gives us, it's hard to tell how much the situation is influencing the growth, but it's still going up. I'm sorry, I'm not looking very happy about it because of the COVID, not because of that massive growth, of course. And regarding the whole operation and the company, we've never had an office. We were always working remotely, so the situation didn't change anything, actually. Not only like internally in that core team, because it worked remotely. We were working remotely as well, always, but also with the people, that volunteers, that translators, and that writers I was mentioning. we are all remote.
But would you say that, for example, your partnering museums and so on showed more interest in
with museums and with partners, it's a totally different story, because I think that most of the industry is still in the state of shock and paralyzed. It's very difficult to reach anyone right now. A lot of people like stopped working. They were, I don't know, fired or they're changed works, changed their job. So it's very difficult to connect with institutions right now. And we right now we rely more on our I don't know, our texts, what we find ourselves in collections, not on the content that partners give us.
Cool.
No.
Sergio, from your experience, you collaborate also with a lot of museums worldwide and galleries. Did a lot of projects stop, or maybe you have kind of more interest in your services now when galleries and museums have more time to think about future plans?
So I think we had a very similar experience as Susanna. So people are on not working or they're focusing on different other things. But what we saw is, so first of all, it's very hard to plan. So with everybody that we're talking, also the ones that want to change, it's like, we don't know. Like we are opening now, but maybe we're closing tomorrow.
Yeah.
But what we see, and I think it's also being optimistic for the future, they are more open to digital. If I was talking to different institutions a year or 2 years ago, let's say, or before the pandemic, they were like, I don't know, it's like, we have the paintings and people are coming for the paintings. That's what we're doing. It's like, we don't really not need technology, and that's good too. But now they see that they have to do something. And they are very curious about technology and how it can help them. So before they were like not afraid, but reluctant, and now they're more open. So I think this is what's shifting into good. Is like, okay, we see that there is a need. I think in general, technology pushed like 5 years. It wasn't like what should happen in 5 years. It was on a fast track now in 1 year.
Question for both of you. Tips for collaborating with museums and cultural institutions. Like, what kind of tips can you give for both? For the museums and cultural institutions on one side, working with you guys, and vice versa.
I can start with the ones for someone who would like to work with institutions. Like, there's one and only rule that you really have to be patient. Sometimes I think that institutions think that they're eternal and time doesn't apply to them. So our example of Albertina is a perfect one. Like, we've been contacting them for the past, I wouldn't exaggerate, 6 years. You know, I'm traveling a lot to Vienna. I used to before the pandemics, and I was always contacting them before that maybe we can have a 5-minute chat or whatever. Yeah, and it still didn't work out. So you have to be patient. This is my basic advice here.
Cool.
Sergio.
So I think it's, do you know how, did I tell you the story how we came to Albertina?
No.
So what we did was, at the start, when we also had the MVP, we were like thinking, how should we get it out there? And because the first interviews that we had with at least artists here in Austria were like, I'm not so sure. So we said, okay, we have to have a use case. It will be best when we have a use case with an institution that is known and respected. And Albertina managed to get this image in the, I don't know, last 10 years. And then we went in, and we were very lucky to find an extremely cool exhibition from our perspective. It was showing first film sets. So for the first films ever filmed,
Yeah,
they had pictures with, it
was nice.
Filmsters, it was called. So we went in, made pictures with our phone from all the photos that they had there. Went back to the office, which was like a room in my apartment back then, and we were searching for all the movies like day and night, searching for exact scenes. So we put them in our MVP. went back to the museum, filmed it how it looked like. Then we had some people who were very curious, what are you doing there? It's like, you have this app, and it's like, I have to install it. So in a very short amount of time, we had like 10 people trying it out. We filmed them, which was very nice because they let us do that in Albertina. And then we sent the film, it's like, look what we did in your museum, to the director. And like 4 or 5 days later, we were sitting in his office, and he was like, you know what, you're the 5th company telling me about augmented reality, but the first time where I really understand what's the added value. So that means in some cases, at the beginning, it makes maybe sense to go like the extra mile to showcase something, to show what you're offering. Because after that, after doing the project with Albertina, we said, you know, we already have done it. You don't have to pay for it. But let's have a common press conference. You just have to ask the press in, and then we'll just present the project, and that will help us a lot, which also did. And then afterwards, all the other institutions in Vienna, they were calling us. It's like, hey, so about the project you did, Albertina. So this was a way that worked, where we went the extra mile, and it was a gambling because we didn't know what will come out. And yes, it's the moment that creatives somehow manage to showcase better what they can offer to the museum, it's much better. And on the museum side, institution side, I would say just like be curious. We started, for example, something that we're doing is offering these workshops where we're just sitting, having discussions like, this is what's possible. These are some examples. Let's say we try the questions. How would you use it? And then we also help them to create their own content, to create their own accounts, and just have this experiment. So I would say, be curious and try to go new ways. I know being in an institution takes a lot of time and a lot of work to get there, but don't be afraid to try new things out.
You both mentioned the beauty of collecting data behind these apps. Zuzana, you said that you were very surprised about the enormous interest in Brazil. Can you maybe both, or was there anything that also surprised you? There are kind of like hidden kind of things that kind of popped out of this data that you can see, that you would say like, well, that's interesting. Maybe in daily art, some artwork was like seen extremely more than the other one, or something that did you identify some kind of trend or something out of this data?
Yeah, something crossed my mind immediately. So last year we started to show masterpieces from a very little museum in Poland, in Sanok. Nobody ever knows that that city outside of Poland, I believe. But they have a collection of Polish painter from the 20th century. Actually, he was killed in the beginnings of 21st century in his house. His name is Beksiński. I can write him down here. And you know, he's known in Poland, but not appreciated by art historians. And he's completely unknown outside. But he painted these very gloomy, fantastic scenes that are very dark, very heavy, very symbolic as well. If you put his name into Google, you will see what I mean. And I was so shocked that people from abroad were like, oh my God, who is that author? Like, who was he? Like, what kind of imagination he had? He's like, I would call him a contemporary Bosch a bit, because of these very fantastical creatures and like serious heavy stuff. And it worked perfectly well for the moods in pandemia as well. So I was shocked that, as I said, nobody in Poland thinks of him as, I know, some kind of national painter or someone who should be promoted anywhere. but it really resonated with our users in extreme way. You know, I've received like thousands of emails. Oh my God, like where's that Sanok? It's very difficult to get there. And could you please write more about him? So we wrote some articles, and we are publishing his works on quite often. But that was something extreme as well, because he's not popular. We thought that, oh, we should put Van Gogh or Monet or Renoir in the app because he sells always. They sell always. They're always popular and people like them. But that was an example that someone relatively unknown could just resonate with the art with people. So this is something that shocked us as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Sergio, you?
So, you know, I mentioned it a little bit at the beginning where we were thinking that this is kind of a new thing for younger generations, or maybe people who are not so interested in art. But we saw that, for example, the ages are also very well through the whole spectrum. We also saw at some point like an elderly couple, because when we're starting with some projects, we're also there to watch people. Sounds creepy. It's not. It's just like to see if there's everything is working as expected. And we saw, for example, an older couple, I would say around 75, 80. And they saw the people with the phones, and they had like different information, and they went to the employee of the museum that was there in the room. It's like, what are they doing? It was like, you have to download this app, and then you'll have information, animation about the artworks. Oh, cool. So they were the only ones without the phones. It was, I think, February. He had to go down to the cloakroom to get the phone, and he did so. And then came back, and together with the code to search for the app and installed it. And then they looked at an artwork, and it came alive. And he was very proud, looking at her as like, did you see what I can do? So the whole experience was like, he attributed to himself. It's like, look what I can do with the technology. Look like how I can have a different experience with these museums that we already know. So that was like an eye-opening thing that, you know, people who are also enjoying the art for what it is and already have the whole information, they are still very curious about this experience.
Cool. Hey, thank you both. As time is kind of running out for our session, and I know you are both super busy. Really, really thank you for taking time. And looking forward to meet you at another conference somewhere in the future.
Hopefully somewhere physically, in some warm place, please. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you.
Everyone should download. I think they already did your apps, so I hope you got some new users today, and for sure I will also using them in the future also. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Yeah.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Ok, nadaljujemo v slovenščini. Zdaj imamo pa z nami še Davida Kvaternika iz podjetja Tovarna Teh, ki se pa tudi ukvarja z virtualno resničnostjo in obogateno resničnostjo. Dela se tu en zelo zanimiv projekt pred kratkim, v katerem bo David ziher kaj povedal, Ruska kapelica, digitalizacija Ruske kapelice. David, izvoli predstaviti še vaše delo.
Evo. Ja, v bistvu naša zgodba se je začela 2011 v Persepolisu. Samo sekundico, screen share. In sicer... Aha. Zakaj pa ni? Aha. Zgleda, da ne zazna tega. Evo ja, oziroma se bomo raje na tole pol vrnili. Tako da ja, smo mislili nekaj skrbeti. Tako da ja, naša zgodba se je začela v Persepolisu in sicer jaz sem tam stal v eni dihjemajoči dvorani. Moja domišljija je delala v najvišji predstavi, wow, koliko zgodovine se je tle odvil. Zdaj Dar je ukazal pohod na Grčijo tamle, kjer je osvobodil Žide iz suženjstva, iz tistega balkona, vsi kralji, umetniki, misleci, prestolnica Velike Perzije. Ostali del naše skupine se pa sprehajal med ruševinami. Senca, gremo tja. Ok, Persepolis, ček. Drugi, wow. Kako je to sploh možno? In tukaj sem opazil v bistvu problem. Začetek vsake podjetniške zgodbe. Ne? Pri meni je padla odločitev, da potrebujemo časovni stroj. Zdaj, v bistvu naše potovanje se tako ni začelo z samo tehnologijo, ampak z realnim problemom, z željo, ki jo lahko v bistvu uresniči le tehnologija. Po tej poti smo sčasoma prišli do tehnologij digitalne resničnosti, kot jim mi pravimo, torej ne obratno. Se pravi, zdaj pa počasi pridemo do vseh naših igračk. Realno stanje v 3D model, 3D skeniranje, fotografija, modeliranje, knjige seveda ostanejo, to nam ni ušlo, neverjetne, pač 50 let stare cirilične zadeve, ki imajo v sebi noter za digitalizacijo fenomenalne zaklade. Tako da, ja, in zdaj tu je zajem kreacija vsebin. Ta prav časovni stroj nam pa omogoča, kako konzumiramo te vsebine. VR, AR, MR. V bistvu naš dolgoročni cilj iz 2011, na katerem naš londonski startup v prostem času še zmeraj dela naprej, je ustvariti turistično VR in AR aplikacijo za sprehod po nekaj najzanimivejših in najbolj obiskanih virtualno rekonstruiranih sajtov. Atensko Akropolo, v bistvu vse od Propileje na gor, smo že v celoti rekonstruirali. Poenostavljena različica že krasi učbenike za elektronske učbenike za zgodovino skupine Klet. Bom pa le par slik pokazal, drugače ostalo nas pa NDA tlele ful vežejo. Rad bi še to v bistvu omenil, da je bila ideja Yorify, kakor pravimo, kakor je ime našemu startupu, v bistvu je tovarna tek spin-up tega londonskega, kljub temu, da zdaj govorimo, pač, ki smo v Sloveniji, ne se pogovarjamo o tem, ker tudi pač različne stvari delamo od del ekipe. V bistvu vedno smo hoteli biti most med vrhunsko arheologijo na eni strani in med, da rečem, common Joe, navadnim državljanom. Bili smo na eni konferenci, long story short, približno en dan pa pol smo se pogovarjali, so se pogovarjali o odtenku, ker vemo, v bistvu vsa antika je bila polikromatična, ne, se pravi to, da imamo danes, mislimo, da imamo bele kipe, bele stavbe, to pač, se pravi, vse je bilo barva, vse je bilo pobarvan. Skratka, in en dan pa pol je bilo debate o odtenku enega stebra. Zdaj, to je, jaz razumem, jaz cenim pomembnost tega, koliko je to važno. Zato, ker če ne more noben rekonstruirati, če ne vemo zdaj, ne moramo kar nekaj, mislim, pač čim manj ugibamo, kolikor je možno, ne? Ampak po drugi strani si pa predstavljam pač te, kakor sem rekel, pač v Persepolisu, vsa ostala skupina, ki pa ni glih, bom rekel, nagovorjena iz tega. Ne? Tako da mi smo prišli v bistvu do tega, da je ogromen gap, se pravi ogromna praznina med zanimanjem average Joe-ja in med tem, kar mu v bistvu trenutno profesionalna sfera ponuja. Tako da smo tudi v bistvu našo aplikacijo Emone, ki bom pol pokazal ene par skrinov, nikoli ni bila lončana, sploh, pač naredili smo jo v bistvu tam 2015, približno je bila fertik, ampak je v bistvu zastarela ratala, preden smo jo do konca, pa smo druge zadeve delali. Tam smo v bistvu, evo, tole bi res, ja, bom pa pokazal. Skratka, smo se fokusirali na način, kako povemo zgodbo in smo prišli do tega, da je, se pravi, user gleda, še ena stvar mogoče, ki jo fajn, da omenjam na tej točki, vedno je v našem delu nujno imeti uporabnika na prvem mestu in testirati. Zdaj, en angleški je wrong assumptions are the mother of all apps. In se pravi, ko smo v bistvu Emono začeli razvijati, smo videli najprej smo naredili kompleten game engine. To pomeni, da se sprehajaš kakor v igrci, se pravi, imaš telefon in imaš en kontroler, greš naravnost, levo, desno, imaš drug kontroler, da v bistvu pogled zamenjaš, in smo to dali userjem v roke. In večinoma tam od 15 do 30 let, recimo. In so se naveličali, recimo, po 2 enotah časa. Potem smo pa mi zadevo zdamali down v tehničnem smislu na spote, se pravi na določene pač točke, ampak te točke smo pa mi zbrali, smo jih selekcionirali, za katere smo mi odločili, da so najbolj zanimive. In s tem smo v bistvu skoncentrirali attention span in je bil v bistvu engagement iz 2 šel na 9 od 10 enot časa, naprimer. Potem smo v teh, se pravi, zdaj smo v bistvu grafično najbolj zanimive točke zbrali. Potem smo gledali attention span, se pravi,
Mislim, da je David zamrznil. David? Aha, bomo počakali malo, da se David vrne nazaj.
Pardon, a je na mojem koncu prišlo do povezave?
Ja, všel si nam, tako da si nazaj.
Noro, pardon, ni mi jasno. Zgleda se je PPO na vsaki 24 ur. Ok, pardon. Se pravi, ja, v bistvu smo prišli do tega, da smo pač na 140 znakov dolžine starega Twitter posta.
David, prosti. Mislim, da nimaš kamere vklopljene, ali se motim? David? Ok. Počakamo mogoče še minuto. David? Ok. Mogoče damo Davidu malo časa, da si vzpostavil svojo povezavo nazaj. Pa bi pol mogoče na tej točki prosil Uršo iz ID20 zavoda, da predstavim...
Pardon, če bo še enkrat...
No, daj probajmo še.
Sam pošljem 2 linka še. Pardon.
Zdaj te pa vidimo, a boš?
Zadnji poskus, če ne, pa pošljem še 2 linka pol v chat in tudi.
Ok, dajmo.
Ok, pardon. Tako da ja, no, evo, mogoče bomo šli kar to počasi gledati. Se pravi, skratka, ja, koncentrirana zgodba, ki deluje z modernim attention spanom, se pravi, gledaš ti naprimer v rimsko verzijo WC ščetke in imaš to, se pravi, da veš, kaj gledaš v 140 znakov s čim več zabavnih informacij. Mogoče bi lahko omenil, ja, zdaj kaj smo še v zadnjem času delali, še posebej na našem teritoriju v smislu, in sicer v 2020 smo z turizmom Kranjska Gora in z Skateboxom naredili eno novo postajo, če rečemo temu, časovnega stroja na Ruski kapelci na Vršiču. Evo, pa gremo lahko kar pogledat tale en super predstavitven video. Sekunda. Share screen. Sound. Evo, tole je že recimo en prvi tak primer, kaj lahko fuzija različnih naših 3D igračk. Tele markerji so 3D naprintani. Imamo Trentarja. Evo, in ena izmed v bistvu največjih plusov augmented reality je, da uporabiš real world lokacijo. Se pravi, zdaj smo tukaj pred Rusko kapelico, tukaj vidimo točno tle, kjer je zdaj ustavljen, gre v bistvu pred nami cesta, izdol se pripeleš. Ko ti poskeniraš ta marker na tej cesti pred tabo, pripeljata dva kamiončka iz Prve svetovne vojne, en ambulance car, drug vleče Škoda Top. Uporaba lokacije. Evo, ena izmed stvari, ki jih v bistvu mi najraje počnemo, s katero smo sploh začeli. In sicer tale vlečnica, ki je zdaj tukaj ustavljen, gre za tovorno žičnico, je rekonstruirana točno na podlagi starih fotk. Zdaj, če shaream screen še drugi. Evo. Evo, tukaj vidimo zdaj žičnico originalno. Aha, naša ruska vojačka, eksperiment z markerji, tukaj pa še enkrat vidimo žičnica. Se pravi, tole je zelo taka zabavna stvarca. Samo da priklopimo screen share nazaj na takole. Lepota, kjer v resničnem okolju. Aha, pa še ena zelo uporabna zadeva, ki mislim, da bi marsikje prav prišla. In sicer ena največjih problemov, ko greš na Rusko kapelico, je to, da je večino časa zaprta. Kar pomeni, da ne moreš v bistvu, če ni odklenjena, ne moreš videti noter. Mi smo ta problem rešili tako, da greš lahko v njeno virtualno dvojčico, nekaj metrov stran, vstopaš s svojim telefonom in se dejansko sprehajaš po tem, kakor bi Evo, potem še ena zadevca, mogoče lahko pokažemo še ene par, samo da pridemo do to pravega zavihka. Aha. In sicer, ja, tukaj sem si kar odprl seznamček, da slučajno ne pozabim, ker jih iz glave ne znam našteti, pa še itak tlele niso vse. Ene par igračk, ki omogočajo v bistvu izdelavo in uporabo časovnega strojčka. Se pravi, zdaj imamo v bistvu tle 3D printerje, motion sensing, se pravi, da v bistvu gibanje likov ujameš v stromena, se pravi, tistega vstržka v bistvu premikaš. Razni 3D skeneri, DSLR kamere 360, droni, VR headseti, AR headseti, projektorji, hologrami in tako naprej. Evo, hotel sem do tega priti. Zdaj, edino, kjer je možno v bistvu našo emono zaenkrat videti, je, zgleda, moram zapreti ene par tehle, da pridemo, evo, je na našem Yorify Instagramu. Tukaj pa se tudi vidi v bistvu razlog na nekaterih mogoče malo starejših fotkah, zakaj nismo tega nikoli še launchali, zato ker smo mnenja, da še ni zadosti dobro, da bi launchali. Zdaj, od takrat, ko smo pa v bistvu bili tega mnenja, je pa zadeva že bistveno bolj zastarela vmes. Zdaj, izhajali smo pri našem delu na podlagi dela Ljudmile Plesničar-Gec in smo v bistvu čist by the book rekonstruirali po njenem, se pravi, tista maketa, recimo, ki je v centru Ljubljane, smo videli, da je par neskladij, recimo, ki se ne ujemajo v bistvu z njenim delom. Tako da tukaj, evo, sploh za Ljubljančane mogoče lahko kakšno tako zanimivo fotomontažo najdemo. V vmesnem času vse kipe, ki jih imamo mi tukajle, poslikane, imamo mi tudi njihove 3D skene. Zdaj govorimo izključno o antičnih kipih, zato ker je to, kar bom rekel, iz intellectual property rightsov je v bistvu to težji podvig kot dejansko pač sam sken narediti. Tako da nasplošno je to tako malo shady area, z vsemi inštitucijami nismo glih na valovni dolžini glede tega, ne. Ampak še zmeraj, ne, po večini definicij govorimo mi o nekaj 1000 let starih zadevah, ne, tako da. Razen, na primer, tole, ne, kjer je kakšen novejši IP v bistvu vnešen noter. Evo, kakšna fotomontaža, potem radi se pa igramo, to se mi zdi, da je zelo pomembno omeniti, da je treba imeti kar veliko časa nameniti raznim takim zabavnim projektom, a ne, in zakaj ne bi na en planet daleč v vesolju eno rimsko mesto gor dali, pa vidimo, kako izgleda, ne. Se pravi, tule vas povabim, da si še sami malo pogledate handle Yorify. Mogoče še zadnja stvarca, ki bi jo omenil, nisem še v bistvu prav veliko o virtual realityju povedal. Zdaj, pogledali smo v bistvu tudi razliko, mislim, da ni potrebno, da zdajle izgubljamo kaj dosti besed, kaj, mislim, da večina tukaj participatorjev že to kar dobro pozna. Rad bi sem še to omenil, čisto na enem primeru, ki smo ga razvili skupaj z Inštitutom Jožef Štefan in Tehnološkim parkom Ljubljana, kako je možno v bistvu z VR-om prikazati čisto, bom rekel, fiktivne, ne v smislu fiktivne, abstraktne koncepte, za katere nimamo niti 3D, bom rekel, ponazoritve, oziroma do zdaj nismo imeli niti 3D ponazoritve, a ne. Se pravi, v primer strojnega učenja. Pa bomo kar preskočili iz laboratorija v toleto drugo sobico, kjer smo v bistvu matematične, imaginarne koncepte jim dali neko obliko, po kateri se lahko sprehajaš, ne. In zdaj imamo mi tukaj velike baze podatkov in pred nami recimo zraste random forest. Zdaj to je čisto pač v bistvu matematika, hard science, to ne bomo zdajle več izgubljali besed, samo pač bistvo je to, da se da pač pokazati neverjetno veliko, zatem, ker ti imaš v VR-u možnost, da ustvariš kompleten novi svet. Tako da mislim, da, še ena na stole zadevca bom zaključil.
Neki. To je tale naš Ljubljanski grad, pa naslikana Emona.
Upam, da se je slišal kaj. Tole je bil en šolski projekt, in sicer navdušenje mladih nad VR obiskom Emone. Jaz mislim, da sem svoj čas pokuril, se bom probal bolj držati timeframa, tako da kar predajam besedo naprej. Hvala za povabilo še enkrat.
Gašper, jaz imel samo še eno vprašanje. Kot prvo, super, ful, hvala za prezentacijo. Veselimo se Emone v neki bolj dostopni obliki, tudi na samem terenu, da bomo lahko raziskovali z svojimi mobilnimi telefoni in tako naprej. Vsekakor upam, da vam bo to ratalo še naprej razviti. Vprašanje pa je kulturna dediščina in e-učbeniki. Zdaj sploh v tem času e-učenja v zadnjem letu, ki je pač se zelo razvilo. A nam lahko kaj več poveš o tem, kako ste to delali, oziroma kakšni so tukaj parametri za res razvoja tovrstnih vsebin za e-učbenike?
Dobro vprašanje. Jaz bi tako rekel, zaenkrat smo na žalost čist preveč omejeni z dveh plati. Eno je sama tehnologija. Zdaj, mi v bistvu za primer Akropole, ne, mi smo tako vzeli pač naš kompleten full 3D model s skeniranimi kipi in smo ga v bistvu dumali down. Potem smo pa kompletno, se pravi 3D model, po katerem bi se lahko bi AR aplikacije imel, lahko bi se v VR sprehajal po njemu, mi smo ga dumali downali, se pravi v bistvu poenostavili, skompresirali, stlačili v video, v 2D video. Zdaj, glih kot posledica v bistvu korona krize, ne, so tudi naši partnerji zelo dvignili, bom rekel, budžete in pohitrili, bom rekel, razvojne cikle. In zdaj že zelo veliko kontenta, ki smo ga na ta način pohabili, bom rekel, zdaj reusamo in repurposamo in končno delamo žive derivate iz njega. Tako da to je en problem, ta drug problem pa mislim, da je pa nerešljiv oziroma si ga ne predstavlja mogoče srednjeročno na EU ravni, ne? In sicer kakšne učni načrti. Ne? Se pravim, to zdaj v bistvu je mogoče out of the scope tega, kar se danes pogovarjamo, ne? Ampak ker smo mi slišali, kakšni so šli zraven tukaj, ne? Ker to je šlo pač po državah po celi Evropi, ne? In seveda so mogli zadostiti vsem učnim načrtom od različne države, še različne videe smo mogli delati, ne? Ampak ker sem jaz slišal pač, kakšne stvari imajo povedane zraven, ne? Se pravi, namesto zgodbe, naprimer imamo Akropolo, namesto mita o boju med Ateno in Pozejdonom za pokroviteljstvo in kako so Atenci dobili oljko in tako naprej, imamo mi, to je Areopag, to je Apollo Hippokraikos, to je Athena Parthenos in podobno. Tako na hitro.
Hvala David za prezentacijo, veliko uspešnih projektov še naprej in res hvala, da si tudi vzel danes čas predstaviti, kaj delate. Jaz bi pa na tej točki zdaj povabil Uršo iz ID20.
Ja, zdravo, en lep pozdrav.
Super. Skratka, Urša bo predstavila Heritage Lab in dediščinski inkubatorski program, ki je namenjen razvoju. No, Urša, boš ti povedala.
Seveda. Mene samo zanima, kako se tale prezentacija vidi. Bo v redu?
Vidi se super, lahko daš samo še prezent.
Aha, evo. Tako. Ok, en lep pozdrav vsem skupaj. Jaz sem Urša Mihevc iz Zavoda ID20, Zavoda za inovacije v dediščini. Nahajamo se v Idriji, morda za tiste, ki ne veste, Idrija je znana po dediščini živega srebra, namreč od leta 2012 je tudi vpisana na UNESCO seznam svetovne dediščine. Njena zgodovina je namreč neločljivo povezana s 500-letnim pridobivanjem živega srebra, ki je tudi to je pomembno sooblikovalo razvoj tako svetovne znanosti, ekonomije, gospodarstva kot medicine in drugih področij. Bilo pa je tudi nepogrešljivo v samem postopku amalgamacije za pridobivanje srebra in pa tudi zlata. No, da se vrnem na Zavod ID20, mi smo ekipa mladih, ki smo do sedaj izvedli že več kot 20 projektov, uspešnih projektov s področja tako socialnega podjetništva kot kulturne dediščine. Naša misija je namreč razvoj in ohranjanje dediščine z inovativnimi pristopi, ki v polje kulturne dediščine vnašajo skratka elemente socialnega podjetništva, vse skupaj pa tudi kombiniramo z različnimi, kako naj rečem, panogami oziroma z vrstmi kulturno-kreativnih industrij, kot so na primer oblikovanje, arhitektura in pa marketing. In skratka na ta način iščemo, kako bi lahko dediščino razvili za sodobnost, kako bi lahko tudi mlade bolj angažirali in kako bi skratka interpretirali in reinterpretirali dediščino. Danes pa predstavljam projekt Heritage Lab, ki poteka v koprodukciji s Centrom za kreativnost in je tudi del partnerske mreže platforme Centra za kreativnost. Nekaj o samem Heritage Labu. Ja, to idejo v bistvu razvijamo že kar nekaj let. Vse se je začelo pred 2 leti, leta 2018 smo se prijavili na natečaj v organizaciji Evropske komisije in sicer ona je razpisala skratka ta tekmovanje z naslovom European Social Innovation Competition oziroma mednarodno tekmovanje za socialno inovacijo. Komisija je v bistvu takrat nagovarjala problem brezposelnosti mladih v času hitrih družbenih sprememb in je tudi zbirala predloge za razvoj novih inovativnih delovnih mest v lokalnih okoljih. In naš projekt Heritage Lab je prejel prvo nagrado, torej mi smo predstavili ta projekt in smo od okoli 720 prijav iz cele Evrope prejeli prvo nagrado, tako da takrat se je vse skupaj začelo. Zdaj to je nekje na tem področju delujemo in kot zavod in tudi ta projekt Heritage Lab, torej v presečišču nekako in socialnih inovacij in podjetništva in dediščine. Zdaj, kako razumemo dediščino? Načeloma jo razumemo kot razvojno sredstvo, kot industrijo dodane vrednosti, ki še ni povsem izkoriščena in mi iščemo te načine, kako jo izkoristiti torej v sodobnost, seveda na način, ki ohranja dediščino. Zdaj, namen samega Heritage Laba je v prvi vrsti spodbuditi interes za podjetništvo v sektorju dediščine. Na različnih področjih, namreč podjetništvo v sektorju dediščine se večinoma povezuje recimo s turizmom, mi pa želimo to povezati tudi z drugimi področji, o tem malo kasneje. Verjamemo, da so produkti in storitve, ki bodo razvite v presečišču tako dediščine kot podjetništva, imele številne pozitivne učinke tako na okoljske, ekonomske, socialne in kulturne vidike lokalne skupnosti. Nenazadnje pa ima cel projekt tudi priložnost in potencial na področju zaposlovanja mladih skozi ustvarjanje novih inovativnih delovnih mest. Zaradi tega je tudi sam projekt primarno namenjen mladim od 20. do 30. leta. Skratka, to je nek tak prvi cilj. Drugi cilj je zagnati sam inkubatorski program za ekipe, ki se poslovno ukvarjajo z dediščino. Skratka, iščemo mlade, ki so angažirani, ki so že delovali na področju in podjetništva ali mogoče dediščine. In pa tretji cilj je razviti poslovni model delovanja Heritage Laba ter razviti nek načrt širitve v druga okolja. Namreč ugotavljamo, da si številne lokalne skupnosti želijo bolj angažiranih mladih, ki bi znali delati z dediščino, in naš cilj je, da z razširjanjem tovrstnih praks spodbudimo tako mlade kot lokalne odločevalce, da zaženejo tovrstne aktivnosti, jih tudi sofinancirajo in podprejo. In želimo, da bi se ta model potem lahko razširil v druga področja, ki so z dediščino tudi bogata. Skratka, 9 področji, kjer bi lahko iskali kulturno dediščino: izobraževanje, vajeništvo, prenos znanja, zgodbarjenje, gastronomija in kmetijstvo, dogodki in festivali, umetnost in obrt, trg starin, arts market, nepremičninski razvoj, področje razvoja lokalne skupnosti in pa turizem. Torej, želimo poudariti, da ni samo turizem, so tudi druga različna področja. Kdo je naša ciljna skupina? Kakor sem že omenila, angažirani mladi od 20. do 30. leta, ki so že delovali ali v podjetništvu ali v dediščini in ki prihajajo iz manjših, recimo polperifernih območij, ki so bogata z dediščino. Program pa sam nudi podporo v obliki mentorstva. Imamo mentorje, ki delujejo na področju tako inovacij kot dediščine in podjetništva, tako da bo to mentorstvo personalizirano, tudi seveda problemsko usmerjeno. Nudimo raziskavo trga, dobro poznamo tako lokalni, nacionalni kot globalni ekosistem. Nudimo tesno okolje, ker imamo že razvito mrežo partnerstev prodajaln in prizorišč, kar recimo omogoča hiter dostop do nekih potencialnih kupcev in sodelavcev ter tudi olajša nenazadnje testiranje neke poslovne ideje. In pa nudimo tudi skupnost, vse skozi spodbujamo mreženje, druženje posameznikov, iniciativ, organizacij, ki jim je seveda skupno razumevanje potencialov dediščine. Kako bo sam inkubator potekal? Nekako smo ga razdelili v 3 faze. Zdaj smo sicer v prvi fazi, to pomeni, da smo v fazi javnega poziva, namreč zbiramo prijave. Zdaj smo ravno lansirali projekt, tako da zbiramo prijave do 13. aprila. Potem bomo pa do vseh prijavljenih zbrali nekje od 3 do 5 ekip, ki jim bomo nudili, skratka, ki jih bomo inkubirali oziroma inkubirali njihove ideje. Zdaj v prvi fazi, prva faza, cilj je seveda premišljen in argumentiran poslovni model. Nudili bomo ekipi 15 ur mentorske podpore, 200 evrov tako imenovanega pizza money, torej za potne stroške, tisk, dodatna izobraževanja. Vse skozi bomo nudili ekipi prostor za delo v Inzagiju, kjer tudi mi delujemo, in pa 14-dnevna informiranja o priložnostih. Druga faza je namenjena že razvojnemu načrtu z motivirano ekipo. Tukaj bo nudenih 20 ur profesionalne individualne mentorske podpore, 800 evrov, za različne stroške. Seveda ta coworking space, torej prostor za delo v našem Inzagiju. Izdelavo spletne strani bomo nudili možnost udeležbe na organiziranem letnem študijskem izletu v tujino, ki bo seveda prepleteno z dediščino. 14-dnevno informiranje o priložnostih in podporo pri prijavi na javne razpise. V tretji fazi pa seveda cilj je izboljšan in testiran izdelek ali storitev. Torej, nudili bomo serijo praktičnih testiranj proizvoda, storitve, vse skozi bomo zraven, mentorirali, bomo sodelovali pri odprtju novih prodajnih kanalov, nudili bomo računovodsko, davčno in drugo administrativno podporo, marketinško podporo, spletno stran, coworking space, možnost udeležbe na organiziranem letnem študijskem izletu v tujino, 14-dnevno informiranje o priložnostih in tudi seveda podporo pri prijavi na javne razpise. Ja, zelo hitro se mi zdi, je šel ta čas. Res sem želela zelo strjeno predstaviti, čim krajše. Vabim vas, da stopimo v stik. Fantje vam bojo z veseljem odgovorili, vkolikor boste imeli kakršnakoli vprašanja. Oni so tudi nenazadnje vsebinci projekta, tisti, ki to izvajajo. Skratka, lahko nam pišete na info@ida20.si, prijave so pa omogočene na spletni strani www.ida20.si/heritage-lab. Veseli bomo prijav, mislim, da jih imamo že okoli 10, tako da se veselimo potem zbirati prijave in sodelovati z nadobudnimi ekipami. Najlepša hvala.
Urša, hvala za to predstavitev. Jaz vam tudi želim, seveda, da najdete super dobre in zanimive ideje. Kdaj lahko približno pričakujemo, da bomo tudi ostali videli rezultate vašega inkubatorskega programa? Kdaj boste lahko predstavili te projekte? Koliko časa to bo trajalo približno?
Ja, kakšno leto bomo to razvijali. Tako da jaz mislim, da zdaj po 13. aprilu bomo začeli z evalvacijo vseh prijavljenih ekip, potem bomo pa izbrali tistih nekaj ekip, ki jih bomo inkubirali, ki jim bomo nudili vso to podporo. Tako da jaz mislim, da nekje v sredi leta, mogoče kakšen mesec, 2 kasneje, bomo že imeli kakšne bolj konkretne rezultate.
Super, bomo spremljali z zanimanjem. Tako da hvala še enkrat, Urša.
Hvala.
Hvala vsem, ki ste se udeležili tega našega zadnjega dogodka ta teden. Res hvala za udeležbo. Z Gašperjem z Tehnološkega parka vas bomo v prihodnjem tednu povabili na še en dogodek, tako da lahko po e-mailu pričakujete povabilo. In to je za danes to, tako da lepo popoldne še vsem naprej in se vidimo še v kratkem. Gašper, si hočeš še kaj dodati?
Zelo lepo bi se zahvalil vsem za udeležbo včeraj in danes na vseh dogodkih. Upam, da je bilo vsem zanimivo. V Tehnološkem parku skupaj s Poligonom si bomo še prizadevali, da bi še naprej gradili na tej skupnosti, v bistvu nekakšni, ki se mi zdi, se je skozi tele 3 dni tudi ustvarila in katera se mi zdi tudi nima veliko priložnosti, da se sreča. Tako da, kot je že rekel Luka, zelo vabljeni tudi na naslednje dogodke, ki bomo pripravili skupaj. Prvi se planira že v začetku aprila. Vsi boste o tem obveščeni, tako da se že veselim, da se spet vidimo.
Ok, hvala sem. Adijo.
Adijo, hvala.